Around 30,000 Indigenous South Australians were eligible to vote in last weekend's South Australian Voice to Parliament elections. Because despite every single South Australian electorate voting no in the Voice referendum last year, delivering the second highest no vote of any state or territory, with 64% of South Australians voting no, the Labor state government there has pushed ahead with its own Voice to Parliament, and we're learning now not only is this new chamber divisive and race-based, but it also has the potential to frustrate the state's nuclear industry before it even begins. Resisting that push is One Nation MP Sarah Game, who joins me now. Sarah, tell me about your petition to get the Voice out of South Australia.
Thanks so much, Rita. Look, as far as I can see, disappointingly, One Nation is the only party in South Australia actually committed to repealing the state voice. And on that basis, I've got a petition to support the bill that I've put forward to Parliament to repeal the state voice. I'd really like to see from the Liberal Party a clear position and, in fact, more collaboration. When we look at the debates that we've had in Parliament, it seems that the Liberal Party have gone from debating the detail to settling on a no for now vote. And I think that's not good enough for our voting public.
Well, there seems to be a bit of confusion about who's holding up the opposition to the Voice. The Liberals say it's One Nation, it's yourself. You're saying they're not clear on this. How do we actually have the interests of at least 64% of South Australians represented? Because it's very clear that the South Australian people do not want this divisive voice on any level. We've had a vote nationally, but if you don't support this nationally, I'd suggest there's very little chance you support it at state level.
That's right. I mean, we're hearing from the Labor government, the state voice is different to the federal voice. But really, when we're looking at the reasons about why the federal voice was rejected in the first place, I would say from the community feedback I've had that it's for the same reason that we don't want the state voice, and that's division, and that's wastage of money and a cost of living crisis. And that is opposition to a growing bureaucracy. I mean, once I saw that the voice legislation here was going to pass, I tried putting up an amendment to limit the number of committees that could be formed, because although there will be 46 members in the local First Nations and state First Nations voice, the entire voice will actually consist of over 100 people. And that's because of the additional people required for these committees. And unfortunately, my amendment to limit the number of committees that could be formed actually received no support within the Parliament, which was very disappointing. So in response to your question, Rita, I think really we need to listen to the voice of the South Australian people, and we need to repeal this state voice. Every dollar that we have should be going on cost of living crisis and early interventions to keep families together.
Now, how's this voice going to impact policies, how policies are formulated, how they're implemented in South Australia, including really the impact on major projects and developments?
Well, I think this is an unknown. Look, whenever we hear the Labor government being criticised about the voice delaying decision-making and delaying necessary legislation, it seems strange to me that their answer quite openly is, look, we don't need to listen to this voice. It has no power at all. And that, for me, begs the question why we're actually spending over $10 million of taxpayer money funding this voice. I think it's going to be an unknown about how this voice is going to work. I mean, ultimately, these 100 people will be represented by one individual in Parliament. My understanding from the Aboriginal communities that have contacted me is that that is completely against their cultural beliefs and very deeply offensive to have others speaking on behalf of their communities. And so how that will actually play out in a timely manner, I think remains to be seen.
Sarah, I also want to ask you about the South Australian Labor government rejecting a review of what's happening in that state as far as trans care for young children. We're talking about under 18, minors. There was going to be a review to see how the gender affirming model was working, but that was rejected.
That's correct. So it actually ultimately didn't get put before the Parliament because the Labor government came out and declared that they would oppose it. And so there wouldn't have been the numbers to get it through. I certainly would have supported the establishment of that committee and I believe would have been on that committee. I think the Labor government has again misread the public feelings on this issue because it's loud and clear to me from all sides of politics that the public have absolutely had it with gender fluidity being taught in schools and promoted within our society. And ultimately, this committee was about looking into the best care of our children.
Well, absolutely. It wasn't even suggesting banning any treatments or having any dramatic changes. It was going to be an initial review to see how these programs are working. And we've already seen in the UK just last week, the NHS has stopped under 18s receiving puberty blockers. We've seen all sorts of changes in policy in states across America and Scandinavia. What's happening in Australia and South Australia where the politicians are running scared of just a review?
It doesn't make any sense, Rita. Look, when I got to Parliament, one of the first things I did was speak to some leading psychiatrists here in this state, and I asked them this question: are you confident that we've got it right on this issue and how we're treating these children? And they've told me, look, no, they don't know. And it's something that they're still looking into. And I really think it was a very, very dismal response from the Labor government to not support the establishment of that committee. It's what the public want and it's what our children deserve.
Sarah Game, thank you so much for your time this evening.